How many Spurs players should you be bringing in your team? What should you do for the Game Week 7 double game week? And which players are the right players to keep ahead of Game Week 5? In this video, I'll be answering all of those questions. Welcome to the video, guys. I'm the FPL chairman, and in this transfer guide Game Week 5 video, I'll be taking you through all of the answers to your key questions and key dilemmas ahead of Game Week 5. First, we're going to look at which Spurs players should you be bringing in. We're then going to be taking a look ahead into Game Week 7's double game week with Luton and Burnley facing a double game week. And then lastly, which key players are FPL managers looking to transfer out or bring in ahead of Game Week 5. Looking ahead to Spurs players to bring in, I've highlighted 4 of the main Spurs players that I think a lot of FPL managers are bringing in their team ahead of Game Week 5 against Sheffield United at home, or have already in their team and are wondering whether they need to get more. Spurs are a really interesting one at the moment. Obviously, they've started really well in this season, and coming off the 5-2 away win with Son obviously netting a hat-trick, Maddison on the points, Romero also getting on the points as well. It's brought Spurs a lot more into the focus than they have been before. If you look ahead of their fixtures, obviously Sheffield United at home is could be an absolute bumper week, and I think that's why a lot of FPL managers are targeting these assets. But Game Week 7 and Game Week 6 and 7 with Arsenal away and Liverpool at home, those are really tough fixtures, which is for me why Game Week 8, in terms of Luton away and those fixtures ahead, Fulham at home and Crystal Palace away, is the right time to be looking to bring in Spurs players in mass, rather than looking to really take apart your team going into Game Week 5. Now, there's obviously a lot of benefits to bringing in Spurs players ahead of Game Week 5, obviously given how poorly or how open and high potential for points there is, especially at home against Sheffield United. Maddison playing extraordinarily well in that high line creative role, and obviously Son coming off the back of that hat-trick looks like a great asset to be having for this sort of fixture. So my advice to FPL managers would be, if you have Spurs players in your team currently, I would obviously keep them in ahead of the Sheffield United fixture. However, Game Week 6 and 7, I can see a lot of FPL managers moving down to potentially 1, even 2 Spurs players, that probably being Son in the midfield, and then either Romero or Udogie in the defence as well. I think looking ahead, especially if you're looking at a Game Week 5 wildcard, I think 2 is the safe bet. I would definitely do the same strategy as a 1 midfielder and 1 defender, rather than potentially going for 2 midfielders and 1 defender. I think Spurs defenders have performed better than average and better than expected. However, I wouldn't be looking to bring them in if you aren't choosing to use your wild card. Udogie and Romero at 4.7 million are great enablers for more budget to be spent on the likes of Son, but I wouldn't be looking to make these transfers unless you need to, unless you have any defenders who you know have got a real tough run of fixtures, like Estupiñán for Brighton, or other players who perhaps are injured, or Arsenal defenders who you might be wanting to move on as well. But the advice from me would be, if you have Spurs players in your team, hold them, obviously for the Game Week 5 against Sheffield United at home. If you are sitting on multiple transfers, it's not a bad thing to bring in Spurs players. You can seize on this fixture, but I wouldn't be looking to mass move in Spurs players until Game Week 8. The double game week for Luton and Burnley is another hot topic for FPL managers, getting a double game week so early in the season. Unfortunately, it's falling on 2 teams who are ultimately at the bottom of the Premier League, and who many FPL managers aren't exactly bringing in their players in masses. But for me, Morris for Luton is the best option. Morris's stats this season so far, if you look totally, 9 shots, 2 on target, and from those 9 shots and 2 on target, only producing 1 goal and sitting on an average of 90 minutes XG of 0.33. They're not wildly impressive figures, but in terms of the total points, he is one of the highest scoring Luton players in the team overall in terms of FPL points. I would not be looking to make mass open heart surgery on your team to chase Luton or Burnley players. I think if you have Luton players in your team, and if you have Morris, for example, then stick with him. If you are someone who is wildcarding before Game Week 7, perhaps look to Morris for a very cheap forward to seize on that game week. But in terms of using two transfers or taking a hit to seize on this double game week, that's not something that I would be looking to do, and I don't think that's the right option. So if you have Morris in your team, brilliant. If you're looking at a wild card and you can fit him in some way, great. Everton away, Burnley at home are games where there is potential for Luton to pick up goals, and Morris is going to be the focal point for that. Which players should I keep? These are three of the most transferred out players ahead of game week 5. Nicholas Jackson, Isak and Pedro, with the amount of transfers out they've had below them as well. If we look more into the stats, we can start to decide who is the best option. If you look at Chelsea's fixtures, they have an okay run of fixtures for the next 4 game weeks, and then things get a lot more difficult. Newcastle are coming into their real decent run of fixtures, and obviously Brighton, and more so specifically Pedro, is obviously a massive risk in terms of minutes at the moment, and getting a full 90 minutes is looking more and more unlikely with the resurgence, and obviously Ferguson coming off a hat-trick as well. But if you look at Jackson starting off with 15 shots, 5 on target and 7 big chances, and an XG per 90 of 0.76, I think the big thing that stands out to me is that 7 big chances. That's one of the highest in the league so far, and I think if you've watched a Chelsea game recently, you would have seen how many opportunities have presented itself to Jackson. So personally for me, if you have him in your team and he is one of your front 2 or front 3, I would be looking to hold him for now. I think he's a sensible asset to have. I think goals will come, but only for the next 3 or 4 game weeks with Chelsea's fixtures. Isaac's stats in comparison: 8 shots, 4 on target, 3 big chances. A lot of those obviously came from the Newcastle's first fixture, and it's been a very rough start to the season to Newcastle. However, I do trust Newcastle assets to really start to flourish in the next few fixtures with how decent their run of fixtures is. So again, should you be bringing him in? No, not at this stage, I wouldn't say, until we see maybe Newcastle hit a decent form after game week 5. Should you transfer him out? I wouldn't transfer him out in a hurry, unless you are looking to move to a more cheaper player, for example, someone like Julian Alvarez. But for now, I would hold Isak in your team as well. João Pedro, on the other hand, I would definitely be getting rid of if he's in your team. Move him on. Brighton's fixtures aren't great. He's not getting the minutes, so an easy decision there. Which players should I keep? Again, I've got 3 options: Bruno Fernandes, Saka and Sterling. Again, I think these are players which are widely questioned at the moment, because more so Fernandes and Saka in terms of their price tag. We've obviously just come off the back of the United Arsenal fixture, where a lot of FPL managers were looking to move these 2 players on because of the class of fixture. And then Sterling, who obviously was massively transferred in ahead of game week 4, however failed to return in terms of any points for his masses of owners who brought him in. Fernandes, I think, is a decent pick out of the United midfielders, obviously comparing him directly to Rashford. If you look at Fernandes' stats, 13 shots, 4 on target and 3 big chances, so even better than Isaac's. I would definitely be keeping him in your team. He's on penalties. Man United fixtures look fantastic: Brighton at home, Burnley away, Crystal Palace at home, Brentford at home. Keep him in your teams, stick with him. Saka, obviously slightly worse fixtures: Everton at home, Everton away, Tottenham at home, Bournemouth away, City at home. However, I do still think Saka is one of the best options to have. Looking at his stats: 12 shots, 5 on target, 3 big chances, an XG per 90 of 0.53. He's the focal point for Arsenal's attack. Obviously, Jesus is coming back into the team now, but I think Saka's minutes is still absolutely nailed on, and considering he's in 60% of overall FPL teams, I'd definitely be keeping your team so you don't miss out on any rank drops. And Sterling, a lot of people obviously transferred him ahead of game week 4, but the blank. Chelsea's fixtures for now are still good: Bournemouth away, Aston Villa at home, Fulham away, Burnley away. Be looking to hold on to him. Still a very good enabler at the price he's at. And although his stats of 9 shots, 3 on target, 3 big chances, is quite similar to Isaac's. Keep him in your team for now. Keep him in for the next 4 game weeks. I think he's the right option to have in your midfield as well. So guys, I hope that video was really useful for you. This was a sort of a snapshot video in terms of looking ahead for game week 5 and answering your questions that I've seen a lot of FPL managers asking over on Twitter. Follow me at FPL Chairman there, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. I'll be putting out a couple more videos ahead of the game week 5 matches. But again, thanks for all the support on the recent videos. The views have been really surprising in terms of what I've been getting. And again, as I always say, really enjoying putting out the content. So if you enjoyed this one, make sure you like it. It really helps me. And if you want to see more videos from me, please make sure to subscribe. Cheers, guys. How many Spurs players should you be bringing in your team?